In-depth analysis of the qualitative shift in China's import and export structure. A 15% surge. Western manufacturing panics as a whole. The qualitative change in China's imports and exports holds the new answer for global industries. Why have Western subsidies and industrial relocation failed to stop the infiltration of China's high-tech products? Hello everyone. I am your cross-cultural technology decoder. Today we will discuss a major event that has been oversimplified by many Western media yet holds the future of global industries. On April 14th, China's General Administration of Customs officially released Q1 2026 import and export data. While this performance record simply marks another historic high, it conceals a secret powerful enough to reshape the landscape of global manufacturing. You may ask, is an import and export growth a common occurrence? Let me tell you a counterintuitive truth. China's growth this time is not quantitative expansion, but qualitative transformation. And the sectors hit hardest are precisely the traditional manufacturing powers of Europe and the United States. Even more transformative, China's exports, once perceived as low-end and inexpensive goods, have quietly evolved into high-tech, high-profit, and eco-friendly premium products. Like an athlete who has been training in seclusion, China has suddenly unveiled its ultimate expertise. If China's exports used to mean selling labor, they now mean selling technology. For instance, once insignificant electric vehicles saw a 77.5% surge in exports in Q1, reaching 2.312 million units. This means 3 out of every 10 exported automobiles worldwide are made in China. Even more striking, exports of 3D printing equipment skyrocketed by 119%, more than doubling year-on-year. Next, we will break down this transformation step by step, explore why it has left Europe and the US deeply uneasy, and most importantly, what it means for the future of global industries. I know Hans, an engineer with 20 years of experience working at an automobile factory in Munich, Germany. During a video call a few days ago, he said helplessly that 8 colleagues on his internal combustion engine vehicle production line had been laid off in Q1 this year, while the newly built new energy workshop next door only hired 3 employees. He admitted that Germany has made efforts to transform, yet when Chinese electric vehicles entered the European market with superior performance and lower prices, consumers made an obvious choice. With the same driving range, Chinese EVs are 25% cheaper than local German models, plus 3 years of free maintenance. Behind this trend is the strong rise of China's mechanical and electrical product exports. In Q1, China's exports of mechanical and electrical products reached 4.34 trillion yuan, an increase of 18.3%, accounting for 63.4% of total exports. In other words, over 6 yuan out of every 10 yuan worth of China's exports are high-tech mechanical and electrical products. Meanwhile, manufacturing investment growth rates in Europe and the US are shrinking simultaneously. In Q1 2026, U.S. manufacturing fixed asset investment growth dropped from 8% to 5.2%. The EU fell from 6% to 3.8%. Japan plummeted sharply from 4% to 2.1%. This is no accident. It is an inevitable outcome of the collision between China's industrial upgrading and the development path of traditional Western manufacturing. Objectively speaking, this is not China winning, but a new industrial model challenging our long-standing understanding of the global manufacturing division of labor. Why has China achieved breakthroughs in high-tech manufacturing that once required decades of accumulation in such a short time? Leveraging its complete industrial chain advantages, China has rapidly upgraded technologies and reduced costs. This phenomenon deserves deep reflection from everyone concerned about global industrial transformation. Han's dilemma is only a microcosm of Western manufacturing woes. As China's high-tech, high-profit, and eco-friendly products continue to penetrate global markets, the first response of Western enterprises is industrial relocation and domestic contraction, yet this is often a suicidal remedy. An American friend of mine in charge of wind turbine production management at General Electric said the company closed 3 domestic wind turbine factories at the end of last year, and relocated production capacity to Southeast Asia. The reason is simple. Chinese wind power equipment costs 40% less than US products, making domestically manufactured turbines completely uncompetitive on price. Similarly, Volkswagen and BMW of Germany have quietly shifted part of their new energy vehicle production capacity to Mexico, attempting to offset competition from Chinese EVs by cutting labor costs. Toyota of Japan suspended 2 domestic internal combustion engine production lines and focused on new energy technology research and development. Even so, Japan's home appliance and machinery manufacturing industry still cut 28,000 jobs in Q1. Sadly, industrial relocation has failed to solve fundamental problems. The supply chain maturity and skilled workforce quality in Southeast Asia are far inferior to China. Many relocated production lines have instead suffered from unstable quality and delayed deliveries. The core contradiction lies here. Traditional Western manufacturing has long relied on existing technological and brand advantages while neglecting cost control and rapid technological iteration. China, by contrast, seized opportunities from global green transition and digital upgrading, developing a path excelling in both technology and cost performance. We have to reflect, in global industrial competition, what matters more, accumulated brand heritage, or the ability to adapt quickly to markets and iterate technologies. Since industrial relocation does not work, Europe and the US have turned to another measure, ramping up subsidies and setting trade barriers. Yet this approach yields minimal results despite massive spending. The EU launched a €100 billion new energy vehicle subsidy program, while the US invested $369 billion in supporting semiconductors and new energy industries, attempting to safeguard its domestic market through policy support. However, reality is harsh. Chinese power battery costs are 35% lower than Europe's. Even with EU consumer subsidies, Chinese EVs still hold a clear price advantage. US semiconductor subsidies also failed to stop China's integrated circuit exports from rising 77.5%. I once spoke with an EU trade official who admitted that the marginal effect of subsidy policies is diminishing. On one hand, huge subsidies have worsened already strained public finances. On the other hand, China's complete industrial chain advantage cannot be offset by short-term subsidies. China has formed an efficient, low-cost closed loop covering raw material processing, component manufacturing and finished product assembly, something Europe and the US cannot replicate in the short term. Notably, this subsidy war ultimately harms consumers and SMEs. Western consumers bear higher taxes, while SMEs face shrinking living space as subsidies favor large corporations. This raises a deeper question. Amid the global green transition, what kind of industrial policy do we actually need? Protecting domestic industries via subsidies, or advancing global technological progress through open competition? In fact, the qualitative structural shift in China's imports and exports is never a zero-sum game, but a microcosm of global industrial transformation. We should not simply interpret it as China replacing Europe and the US. Instead, we should recognize it as a new model of industrial division of labor emerging as humanity addresses climate change and advances technology. China's advantage lies in rapidly translating technologies into cost-effective products, allowing more countries to enjoy dividends of green technology at lower costs. Europe and the US still possess strong R&D capabilities and brand advantages. They only need to adapt to the new market landscape. Of course, China's industrial upgrading also faces challenges, including independent control of core technologies and international trade frictions, all of which need to be addressed. Nevertheless, it is undeniable that China is offering a new possibility for global industrial transformation in its own way. Finally, I invite you to share your views in the comment section. How should Western manufacturing respond to this transformation? What new opportunities can China's industrial upgrading bring to global green development? Don't forget to follow me as we decode the collision between Eastern and Western technology and industries. See you next time, and thank you for watching.